get started here. Let me make sure that I've got sound. Now, we started looking at this last week. We ended the lesson beginning to look at this, and so what I would like to do is, let me just make sure I have good sound. Okay. And so we're going to kind of pick back up with that. But turn to, I tell you what, before we even do that, let me do a review. All right, we need to kind of catch up with where we are, just very quickly and very briefly. We've been looking at angels. We've looked at the introduction to the angelic beings, the indoctrination of angels. We looked up the definition of the word angel itself. It means a messenger. Okay. We also looked at their duties. All right, their roles and responsibilities. They function as God's ministering spirits. They were created to serve God and to do what He would have them to do. But then, as we read in the Word of God, it seems like that's their role, to be servants of God, and yet their responsibility in serving God is to serve man and to help mankind. And we looked at several things several weeks ago concerning that. We've begun to look at the designation of angels. All right, we looked at some specific angels. The angel of the Lord, Lucifer, Michael, Gabriel, Satan, the devil, and Apollyon. And I mentioned that I separated Lucifer from Satan and the devil. I know there's differences of opinions that Lucifer may not have been Satan. There's some that think that. Now, I still tend to think and believe that Lucifer is Satan, but I did separate the two, the names, simply because of the sort of the role and what they're doing. And then, of course, Apollyon or Abaddon is the king or the angel over the bottomless pit. We saw serving angels. We introduced the sons of God, their relationship, their rank. We saw some faithful sons of God. We saw the fallen sons of God and singing angels, special angels. We talked about several things, all right? And last week, we started looking at satanic angels. Now, the satanic angels, these are the angelic beings that have fallen, okay? And there's differences of opinion on that. We may go into some more detail later on concerning them. But I want to look at this from a different perspective than sometimes what it is viewed in our churches. And I want to make, again, we started looking at it last week, so the first part of this will be review from last week. But I want to look at that the gods of the Old Testament were, I believe, they were fallen angels or demonic spirits. They're angelic beings. And when I say angelic beings, I mean spirit beings, okay? And that I believe that God reveals I believe He reveals this truth, okay? Turn to Deuteronomy. I want to go ahead and turn to Deuteronomy chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4. And I know sometimes when we're reading through the Bible, sometimes honestly at least for myself personally, I just read through the Bible and I don't really pay attention. I pay attention to the words that are there, but sometimes I don't pay attention to what is implied, like the opposite side of that. Now, in Deuteronomy chapter 4, okay, verses 14 through 20, we looked at this briefly last week. God reveals in these verses why He did not reveal Himself to the Israelites in a form. Now, we know that God made appearances. We know that Jesus Christ, we believe in theophanies, where there were Old Testament appearances of Jesus Christ, where the angel of the Lord appears. And I think that the angel of the Lord is I know we talked about that before, but the angel of the Lord is either, at times is God come down, and then other times He's just an angel. And the context reveals which is, who it is. But in these verses, God reveals why He never manifested Himself, revealed Himself to people. But not only do we see that, but there is an implication here that the gods that the other nations worship, that maybe those gods or those beings that they worship did reveal themselves. So look at Deuteronomy 4:14. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that ye might do them in the land, whether ye go over to possess it. So notice he says, God commanded me to teach you statutes and judgments. So I'm receiving God's word. Okay? Verse 15. Moses says, take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire. Now notice again, what does he say? You did not see a similitude. A similitude is an image, a likeness. So you did not see any manner, any type of similitude, any type of reflection of me at all. Well, why? He tells them why in verse 16, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female. So, well, Paul's reading, notice what God says, Moses is telling the people. You heard the voice of God, but you did not see his shape, and you did not see his image. Well, why is that? Well, he tells them in verse 16, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image. Now, okay, so what is a graven image? It's an idol, it's a god. So he says God did not reveal himself in an image to you because if he did, you might make it a graven image. You might make an idol of that very image that you saw, the likeness of male or female. Now, isn't that interesting? There, as we're going to see, there are female gods that they worshiped in the Old Testament. Now, I hope that you see where I'm coming from. That you're not going to see me, because if you see me, you might have made an image and worshiped that image. So what did the nations worship? They worshiped little statues, little gods, little idols, big idols, small idols, whatever. It seems that very possibly that what they were worshiping as those gods that, not the Canaanite themselves at the time of Moses may not have seen the being. But you go further back in Canaanite history to the beginning of the worship of this false god, maybe that dude that made that idol, maybe he saw something. Maybe he saw a male deity, not a male deity, but a male being, or maybe even a female being. He says male or female. I know that's a little odd, I know. Verse number 17, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, and the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air. Now, what is he doing here? Now, he's not making a distinction. He's not saying, well, you didn't see me, and now you're making a god of a bird. No. Notice what he says. The first likeness in verse 16 is the likeness of male or female. Do you notice that? Then the likeness of any beast that is on the earth. Then the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air. Then the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground. The next, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. Notice there's 5 different types of things he mentioned, beginning with like a male and female. We know history and things that people worshiped ants, they worshiped beetles, they worship snakes, they worship birds, they worship all sorts of things. But then he says in verse number 19, unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun, the moon, and the stars. Of course, there's sun, moon, and stars. But then notice, even all the host of heaven. Now, there are some that say that the host of heaven is making reference to anything else in the universe, whether it be planets, meteors, comets. But notice what he says at the end of this. Even all the host of heaven shouldest be driven to worship them and serve them. Now, this is very interesting. Which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. Now, what is God divided? Yes, he's divided the sun, moon, and the stars. And there are certain stars that we can see in the western hemisphere that can't be seen in the eastern hemisphere, and vice versa. And in the northern and in the southern. Okay, we know that. But I think it's very interesting that God says that there's a host of heaven that's been divided in the nations. Now, this is reaching back to last week and the week before. We've already looked at scriptures that lets us know that at times this phrase, host of heaven is making reference to spirit beings. We saw several verses that talk about that, okay? And we also saw from Colossians and Ephesians that there are principalities and powers and thrones and dominions, and that those words, those phrases, they're descriptions of geographical locations and geographical dominion. And then we think about the maniac of Gadara and the demons that said, don't send us out of this country. We want to stay in this country. Send us into the pigs, but we don't want to leave this area. I don't want to be dogmatic. And I'm not saying this is what this is talking about. I don't want to say that. I'm saying there's a possibility that these hosts of heaven is making reference to spirit beings that have been divided among the earth, within the earth. Verse 18, but the Lord hath taken you, verse 20, but the Lord hath taken you and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of an inheritance, as ye are this day. Now, isn't this interesting? Verse number 19, the host of heaven has been divided amongst the nations, but the nation of Israel has been chosen and given and taken, as it were, by God himself, the Creator. It's almost as though God is saying, you are my people, and these others, the hosts of heaven, they have the rest of the earth. Okay? Turn to Leviticus 17. Trying to hurry, my goodness. Leviticus 17, turn back to that. There's a new verse that we could look at. Also, Leviticus 17, verse number 7. Now, I'm looking at this verse so that you understand and see that the nation of Israel is offering, that they're offering sacrifices. Of course, then we know they offer sacrifices to gods, but notice what he says here, Leviticus 17:7, and they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils, after whom they have gone a whoring. This shall be a statute forever unto them throughout their generations. This word devils, I've mentioned it before, but the word devils here is satir, which is the he-goat. But notice they offer sacrifices to gods, and yet Moses here, by the word of the Lord, is declaring that they are actually devils. Devils are spirit beings. Isn't that fascinating? Turn back to Deuteronomy 32. Deuteronomy 32. Deuteronomy 32, verse number 17. Here again is another connection. And then we'll look at a passage in two more passages after this. Deuteronomy 32, verse 17. Well, let's read verse 16 because it brings it in. They provoked him, that is the Lord, they provoked him to jealousy with strange gods. With abominations provoked they him to anger. They sacrificed unto devils, not to gods whom they knew not. To new gods they came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. Now the word devils right here, the idea of it means to swell up or to devastate. And notice he's making a connection that these devils, these spirit beings that have swelled up, they've risen up, again, the word means to bring about devastation. It seems to mean that they're bringing about devastation. Now, I know that we're looking back at this. And so maybe what is being implied, and I'm very careful to say that, but maybe what is being implied is that these devils, these beings, brought about devastation, which brought about the worship of them. I know they're throwing themselves into the volcano so that it will rain or they will have a good harvest. Okay? Who's to say that didn't actually happen? That this spirit being showed up to these people in some form, in some way, and said, if you throw somebody in the volcano, I will cause it to rain. Now say, well, but can't only God do that? No. And I hope to see some scripture that angelic beings, spirit beings, have some control and power over the elements. Why? because God gave it to them in their service to mankind. And I think that, of course, in their rebellion against God, and and they're bringing about destruction. Now, I know that we're reading into that a little bit. I get it, but my point is that even as believers, and I know we live in the United States of America in 2022, and this is just, this is TV stuff, right? But to have it in our minds that it is a possibility. Okay. Do we believe that a man named Saul of Tarsus was taking Christians and going to Damascus to put them to death or to put them in prison? And we believe that a shining bright light shone on him. He fell to the earth, heard a voice from heaven that said he was Jesus, and this man radically transformed his life, or, well, of course we know God did, but we believe that, do we not? Yes. Okay? My point is that as believers and as Christians, we should be willing to believe people. I heard a voice that told me I need to go in this bank and kill people. Oh, they're schizophrenic or they're crazy. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. The only one that really knows all that is God. Okay? Maybe they are. Maybe they actually heard a voice that convinced them to go do something crazy. So again, they're worshiping these devils, gods that newly came up. Here it seems to imply that they introduced themselves. Okay, turn to Zechariah. Turn to the one of the last books of the Old Testament, Zechariah. We're about to make a connection with the New Testament with all this, and then we're going to look at several Old Testament deities, and I'm not necessarily going to explain the deities per se and things like that, but just so that you can see them. And I'm hoping that. This week I wasn't even studying on this. I've been prepared for this and excited about this. I was reading something else, doing another study on something, and I came across this verse that really stuck out to me, and I thought I typed out the name, and I didn't. Shame on me. Zechariah 10 in verse number 2, the Bible says, "For the idols have spoken vanity, and the diviners have seen a lie, and have told false dreams. They comfort in vain. Therefore they went their way as a flock. They were troubled because there was no shepherd." Hold on 1 second. Hold on one moment. I know this is odd. To do this right here in the middle, but I want to look this up real quick if I remember right. Okay, yes. The word is teraphim. I should have put this down at the bottom when we get to the specific fallen angels, or even to the sorts of fallen angels. Okay, but the word idol right here, and I just saw this. It is a proper name. Now, in the King James Bible, it's simply translated as idols, and that is normally how it is translated in our King James Bible. Idol, even a lowercase I, like this. But the word for the idols have spoken is teraphim. Notice what it says. The idol, the teraphim, have spoken vanity, and the diviners have seen a lie. Now notice that God is letting us know through Zechariah that the diviners, they are the Old Testament false prophets. Okay? They communicate with the spirit world. They deal with sorcery, witchcraft, necromancy. They try to communicate with the dead. They are soothsayers. They're the fortune tellers of the Old Testament. And there's a lot of other things with that, but that's what these diviners are. Okay, they're seers of. When I say seers of false prophet or seers of false things. Okay, what God is letting us know is that the teraphim has spoken, and the diviners, they've seen a lie. They said, Brother Dan, what are you saying? And I told Paul, again, my point is that God is telling us they've heard something and they've seen something. And God is not shying away from that. And what they have seen and what they have heard is a lie. It's an idol. It's a teraphim. I didn't do a whole lot of study on that. I'll tell you how to spell it because I'm looking at it. It's Terafim, teraphim. Okay, and if you want to do personal study on that, you can do that. I just didn't get into that. I didn't have time. I saw that. What's today? Tuesday. It was late Sunday night when I saw that in my study. All right, last place. Turn to 1 Corinthians. Okay, 1 Corinthians. You say, Brother Daniel, why are we talking about stuff in the Old Testament? Why are we going over all these gods and how that the Old Testament is showing us that the gods, he calls them devils. And there's other passages in the Old Testament, but I want you to see 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 10. No, you know what? Yeah, 1 Corinthians 10. See, verse number 19. Yes, 1 Corinthians 10, 19. Now, this is Paul in the New Testament. He's talking about sacrificing to idols and sacrificing to the altar of the idol. Now, verse number 19. What say I then? Now, let's pay close attention to this. What say I then? That the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifices to idols is anything? Now, notice what Paul is saying. He's dealing with meat and partaking of the table of false idols and things like that. Now, when Paul says in verse number 19, is the idol anything? He is talking about the little statue. Is this little cup? I can start worshiping this cup. The cup of the god of coffee, the god of the coffee bean. I can start worshiping this cup. Is the cup anything? No. No, the cup itself is nothing. Is the coffee in the cup anything? No, it's not. But look at what he says in verse 20. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils. Now, this is my point. He is talking about an idol. He's talking about a statue. But ultimately, what does Paul say? When they offered the sacrifice that is nothing to the idol that is nothing, they're actually offering it to a devil, to a spirit being. He said, Brother Daniel, what is the point? The point is, and my point is that what we read in the Old Testament about these false gods and these false idols, that they are actually not deities, but spirit beings. They're actually some type of a being that has been worshipped. So let's tie all of it together. Deuteronomy 4. God says, I did not make myself known to you like in a similitude or in a vision, because if you would have seen me, you would have made an idol. And then what does God do? Then God goes through and he shows us all of these false gods that they're worshiping are actually devils. They're spirit beings. Paul comes to it in Deuteronomy or in 1 Corinthians, and what does he say? These idols that they're worshiping, behind the idol is actually a devil. Is actually a spirit being. So now let's do this on the handout. Let's look at some specific fallen ones. Some specific ones. Turn to 2 Kings. We're going to look at Adremelech, and then we'll turn to Anamelech. All right. 2 Kings. When I say this is going to be a little tedious, we're going to do a lot of turning because I want you to see. Now remember, keep in mind that these are not simply statues, okay? But that these are spirit beings that revealed themselves. It seems that they have revealed themselves to people, to these men and these women. This is the god of the Syrians, and the gods of Sepharvaim. And I didn't pronounce that right. Verse 31, and the Avites, it's a group of people. These are other gods mentioned within this, made Nibhaz and Tartak and the Seraphites burnt their children in fire to Adremelech and Anemelech, the gods of Seraphaim. Now it is thought, and it is thought that all of the gods that are mentioned here in this verse, that Nibhaz and Tartak are somehow related to Adremelech and Anemelech. Okay, I did not separate these out on the specific fallen angels here and demonic spirits, but notice there's Adremelech and Anemelech, and they burnt their children in the fire to them. Okay, it is possibly that Anemelech is also the god of the Ammonites called Molech. Okay, and we'll look at him here in a few minutes. But they offered their children. Again, and I didn't give any specifics about this. I will say, if you look any of these gods up on the internet, you're going to find all sorts of differences of opinion. And you'll find different drawings and what they look like. Okay? Now, I'm going to say this, that people that despise the God of the Bible and they write about this, you will find, and they make mention, of these things like this. Well, this is a for instance, okay, but Adremelech or Anemelech or whatever, these were actually peaceful gods that brought prosperity to their people. And the God of Israel only wrote negative things about these gods because he was jealous and he didn't like them. Okay, you read things like this. I know it sounds crazy. They take it to that particular level because they despise the God of the Bible. They hate him, and so they talk about that. Here's two more gods. Turn to 1 Kings chapter 11. 1 Kings chapter 11. This is Asherah, and this is one of the gods of the Canaanites. Some of these gods are female gods. Some of them are male gods. Are they female spirit beings? That I don't know. Okay, I'm going to put it out there. I don't know. Possibly. I know typically angels are seen only as male in the Bible. But we have. Maybe I got this. Did I get the reference backwards? I might have. This is Ashtoreth. Verse 5, for Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess, this is the female god, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. We'll mention Milcom again. It is mentioned here. This Milcom is also Molech. On your handout, if you notice, I put these in alphabetical order. I tried to anyway. As far as A, B, C, D, and down the line that we have. Turn to, and so this is one of the other gods. Turn to 1 Samuel 12. 1 Samuel 12 in verse 10. I know these are on our handout. 1 Samuel 12 and verse 10. I believe that I got these references backwards here, and I apologize for that. Verse number 10. Yeah, this is Ashtoreth. And I'm not sure the reference for Asherah. That may have been even supposed to be 2 Kings 11. But 1 Samuel 12, verse 10, and they cried unto the Lord and said, we have sinned because we have forsaken the Lord and have served Balaam and Ashtaroth. But now deliver us out of the hand of our enemies, and we will serve thee. And so here we see, let me turn back over here. Let me see something. Let me see here. I'm going to look one more thing back over here. Okay, now in that passage we have Balaam and we have Ashtaroth. Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and if I remember right, Ashtaroth is, I believe, is also a female god. And so, if I remember right, and so they did worship. Balaam is the male god, and Ashtaroth and Ashtoreth is the female deity. And Allah, they are the gods of fertility and reproduction. So a lot of their worship revolved around that. Okay, revolved around that. We're not going to turn back to this, but in 1 Samuel 12:10, which is where we were, there is the god of Baal, which is also Balaam, and but again, the male god, the male god. Let's turn back to 1 Kings 11. 1 Kings 11, in verse 7, we're going to read about Chemosh. Now, Ashtoreth is the Canaanite goddess. Baal is, that we just mentioned, is possibly also Beelzebub. Now, when we get over to the New Testament, Baal, and if Beelzebub, which in all likelihood it is the description of the same God, Beelzebub is another name for Satan. And so Baal seems to be the chief god, and he does seem to be the primary god, and that is, according to the New Testament, it's Satan. You say, well, brother, what happened? I think that Satan revealed himself as one of the chief gods and the chief beings to the Canaanites, and they worship him. Now, these other gods and these other deities, okay, when I say deities, I'm talking about they worship these false gods, these deities, these spirit beings. I think that they're when I say lesser, like they're underneath Satan, and they're revealing themselves to God. Now, I think it's fascinating, and so I'm going back to Deuteronomy 4. If the host of heaven, in verse number 19, in Deuteronomy 4:19, if the host of heaven, if those are angelic beings that God has divided up, spirit beings He's divided up over the earth and divided them up amongst nations, it's possible, if that's what that is, that, Chemosh, that in 1 Kings 11, verse 7 that we're going to read about, then did Solomon build a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. Okay, this Chemosh is a different being. Maybe he has reign, or he's been over that little area. You know what I mean? And he revealed himself to the Moabites there, and they worshipped him. And then we have Molech, the god of the Ammonites, which we'll mention here in a few minutes. All right, here we go. This is very interesting. Turn to 1 Samuel, chapter 5. This is the god Dagon. 1 Samuel 5. Now, this is the god of the Philistines. Now, Dagon, and you can look these other ones up, like Molech is basically a big fat dude with the head of a bull or whatever. And his arms are stretched out, and that's where they would light the fire and burn their children, okay, and offer them sacrifice. Ashtoreth and Ashtaroth, a female deity, and she had a female shape, okay, and Baal, I'm trying to remember what Baal would look like. Sometimes I think he would have horns and things like that. And so these gods, did they make them? Okay, so this is the thing. Okay, so I believe, again, I really believe this, that these spirit beings revealed themselves. You can look at 1 Samuel 5, and that I believe that these spirit beings revealed themselves to these people, and so they worship them. So Dagon is the fish god, okay? Verse 2, 1 Samuel 5:2, when the Philistines took the ark of God, they brought it into the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. Now, Dagon had the head of a fish and the body of a man. You look at, now I did not mention really any of the Egyptian gods like Isis and Osiris and all of that, because they're not mentioned per se by name in the Old Testament. But this spirit being, did this being reveal himself with the body of a man and the head of a fish? I have no idea. But I do know that there are 4 living creatures in heaven, at least 4, that have the head of the bull, the head of a man, the head of an eagle, and the head of, I forgot the other one. Ezekiel sees these living creatures, and they have a body of a man, wings, and they've got these heads of these animals. Maybe they did. maybe God created these beings to look like this. We don't know. Ezekiel saw these. You get over to John. John talks about the 4 living creatures. Some beings seem to have wings. Some do not. Okay, so I don't know. We don't know. But Dagon, this is what he looks like. This is interesting. Okay, now we're going to get into some differences. Turn to Psalm 91. Psalm 91. This is the being called Debir. D-E-B-E-R. Psalm 91. He is not mentioned by name as far as a specific name. This is much like what we read in Zechariah, where it's translated as idol, but it seems to be like a specific name, Teraphim. This is, look at verse number 5. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. I'm going to go ahead and mention both of these now, even though the second one comes later on down in our list. Okay, this is Debir or Debir. That is, you see the word pestilence in verse 6, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness. That is a specific name, pestilence. And in Hebrew, theology, when you look at the idea of this word pestilence, they saw it as a spirit being, a demonic being that brought disease to them, that brought about pestilence to them. And this is a specific name, a Debir, D-E-B-E-R. It's on the handout. It's also on the PowerPoint. So I think it's very interesting. It is a proper name. Here's another one. Turn to Isaiah 65. Isaiah. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we move on, look at in verse number 6. Nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction. The word destruction is also it's a name, Ketir. We'll get to that in a few minutes on the PowerPoint and the handout, but it's Q-E-T-E-R, and it means destruction. And so it appears that the psalmist here is talking about spirit beings that attack the people of God, and that attack people in general, but they come after the people of God that bring about pestilence and that bring about destruction. This is also the same. It's the same word in Deuteronomy 32:24. We won't turn to that, but it's also mentioned there. All right, quickly turn to Isaiah 65. Isaiah 65. This is another proper name. It is not. Again, it's not translated in the King James Bible in this way. But I want you to see this, that it is a proper name. Isaiah 65 and verse 11. He says, "But ye are they that forsake the Lord, that forget my holy mountain." Now, they've forsaken God. They have forgotten the holy mountain. And again, that's making reference just to Sinai, the Horeb, where they received the law of God, and God made covenant with them. They forsake that. But notice what they did. That prepare a table for that troop. Now, this is very interesting. The word troop here is the proper name, Gad. Gad. This is the same name that Jacob's son's name is Gad, that his mama gave to him. He's a troop. This is a specific name. They forsook God, but notice they're preparing a table for that troop. And then the second one in this verse is, and on our handout, is meni, M-E-N-I, and it's the second word, and furnish, and that furnish the drink offering unto that number. Both of these words, troop and number, I know, again, they're translated troop and number, lowercase, but these are proper names. If you look these words up, and it appears that these are false gods that they worshiped, some form of a false god. You're mentioning this, I'm mentioning this. Remember, these are spirit beings, okay? All right, here we go. Here's another one. We have Marduk. Turn to Jeremiah. Jeremiah 50. Jeremiah 50 in verse number 2. Now, one thing, and I know, listen, I'm 41, saved at the age of 13, and started preaching at around 17, 18 years old. Okay? Went to Bible college, got a 4-year degree, got a master's degree, and even got a doctorate degree. I'm super smart. Okay, no, really, I'm not. I've read through the Bible. I was saved at 13. I started reading through the Bible like once a year at around the age of 18, 19, or 20. And I'm 40, so I'm gonna say I've read through the Bible probably 15 or 20 times. Genesis to Revelation, okay? And I'm learning something. The passage we just read in Isaiah 65:11. You've forsaken God and you've forsaken His covenant, His holy mountain. But then they are offering it to that troop and to that number. Often I would just read past that and I wouldn't see what was actually being said and what is being said. If they are forsaking the true God, what are they now worshiping? False gods. And God calls those false gods that troop and that number. Now, and so my point is that when we read these scriptures and we're reading them, read what is there and read what God is implying, what He is saying, to allow these things to maybe stand out. Look at Jeremiah 50 and verse number 2. He says, "Declare ye among the nations and publish. Set up a standard, publish and conceal not. Say, Babylon is taken, Baal is confounded." Now this Baal, B-E-L, is Baal, B-A-A-L also, okay? Merodach is broken in pieces. Her idols are confounded. Her images are broken in pieces. Here, Merodach is also Marduk. On the handout, it's spelled M-A-R-D-U-K, and it's the same thing. Again, here's a female, another female goddess. And I do not believe that this is the same Ashtaroth. Maybe. I'll say it's maybe. But I don't think that it is. I think this is a different female deity. Merodach, Marduk. Okay? We don't have to turn here because we've already mentioned it. But there's the god of Molech. On the handout and on the PowerPoint is Leviticus 20, verse 2 through 5 are the verses. Molech was a really evil god of the Moabites. They sacrificed children to that. Why in the world? Well, brother, somebody say, well, why would these demonic spirits do this? The demonic spirits want one thing. They want to be worshipped. They want to be as God. They don't like the fact they don't like God. They don't like Jehovah. They want to rebel against Him. They want His worship. And the best way to get at God, and this is my opinion, I say that, destroy what God loves, destroy the crown of His creation, destroy mankind, get man to worship, and there's two motivations for worshiping: fear and love. Fear and love. That's we worship God because we're afraid of Him or because we love Him. God wants us to worship Him because we love Him and not afraid of Him. These demonic spirits, they get mankind to worship them, it appears, through fear, through destruction, driving people to worship them. Another god is Nisroch. Turn to 2 Kings 19. 2 Kings 19. We're almost finished with the specific ones. I am going to look at the sorts of fallen ones today, and we may go just a little bit longer in the study on this particular one. But 2 Kings 19. This is the god of Assyria. Molech is also called Milcom, and he is the god of the Ammonites and the Moabites as well. The Ammonites. Notice 2 Kings 19, verse number 36. I'm getting my page. Yeah, here we go. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and went and returned and dwelt at Nineveh. And it came to pass, as he was worshiping in the house of Nisroch, his god, that Adremelech and Sharezer, his son, smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia. And as for Hardan, his son, reigned in his stead. Notice Nisroch, the god of the Assyrians. Okay? Just another god, another deity. On our handout, next we come to Keter. We've already read that in Psalm 91, verse 5 and 6. That is the god of destruction, one of the gods of destruction, one of the spirit beings. And then lastly, actually a pretty famous one here, but we kind of look over, is Tammuz. Turn to Ezekiel 8. Now, I did not mention the Queen of Heaven. Okay, she is Ashtaroth, but Tammuz is the son of Ashtaroth. Now, Tammuz is, I don't think it was as far as a spirit being as a little boy or anything like that. It just manifested and appeared. Well, hold on a moment. Oh, you know what? I may have typed up the wrong verse. 8:15 does not mention Tammuz at all. I apologize. Then he said unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abomination than these. Oh, I'm sorry, verse 14. Yeah, verse 14. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Tammuz is one of the gods of the Canaanites. Now, Tammuz and Ashtaroth and Baal, okay, these are sort of kind of like a related type of, when I say a trinity, they're kind of related. Tammuz, let me try this again. The Queen of Heaven, okay, is a god that the Israelites worshipped, and then her son is Tammuz. Now, this is referred to as the Madonna child later on in history, okay? It is Babylonian worship. Now, Ashtaroth and Tammuz and the Madonna child, it is the image of a woman holding her son as a baby, okay? It is Babylonian worship. And the reason I mention that is because this worship is still going on in Babylon today, and it's the Madonna child. Every civilization has this. I think it's Isis and Osiris in the Egyptians. The Hindus, they have it. Babylon has it. It's everywhere. Okay, and what it is the worship of this woman that gave birth to this son in deity. And today it's seen in Roman Catholicism. You have Mary and then the baby Jesus. That is, they call her the Queen of Heaven, as they do in Jeremiah, and as the Babylonians did. And it is the Madonna child. This worship is still going on today. This is why you get over to the book of Revelation. The one world government and one world religious system is referred to as Babylon. This religion is still here today, and it's going to be stirred back up again. Okay, but that's a whole nother lesson, I know. But this is Tammuz. That's who this is. So we have a list here of specific fallen beings with specific names that have revealed themselves. Very quickly, if you bear with me for just a few minutes, we only have a few of these, okay? I want to look at the sorts of fallen ones. Now, the reason I call these sorts, because these may be groups of spirit beings. Okay, very quickly turn to, I know we've already read this, but turn to Deuteronomy 32. Quickly, Deuteronomy 32. Now, this is the Shaddim. We've already mentioned this a little bit earlier, but these are what are referred to as the devils in Deuteronomy 32. They are the Shaddim. This is a specific name, the Shaddim. God gives them a plural word. Deuteronomy 32, verse 17. They sacrifice unto devils. Devils. It is plural. And the reason why I'm saying that, sorts, a group of them, is because God is giving them a plural name here, the Shaddim. Very possible it's a group of demonic and spirit beings. All right? Leviticus 17:7. We'll turn there. Again, we've already read this, but Leviticus 17:7. These are the devils, plural. They shall no more offer their offerings unto devils. This is the word satyr. Okay, this is the goat, the he-goat. I think maybe it's either in Greek or Roman mythology, where we see, the body of a man and he's got the head of a goat. This goes all the way back to the days of Israel, and this is an old religion, old worship. It's the satyr. He gives them a plural name, the devils. Unto devils, it's possible there's a group of these little monsters running around, little he-goats running around, a group of them. Okay? Y'all be ready to turn quick, all right? Turn to Psalm 96. Psalm number 96. You have the handout. Let me flip through on the PowerPoint. I apologize. Psalm number 96. Again, these are written within like a plurality. Psalm number 96. Okay, verse 5. He says, "For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens." Now, the word gods right here is it's the same idea of Elohim that we get, like in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God, Elohim. So the idea of this word for all the gods is Elohim, or is spelled Elilim, Elilim. Okay, but God is calling these little gods their idols. But the Lord made the heavens. Well, then what's the point? Okay, these beings come down from the stars. They come down from the heavens. Ancient civilizations say it. The gods, they descended from the sky. They descended from the stars. And they made all of these things. And look at their great power. And God is letting Israel know, no. Yes, they are gods. They are little Elohims. It's a plurality of them. But they didn't make nothing. They didn't make the heavens. Okay, I did. Matthew, we won't necessarily, don't turn to this for time's sake, but Matthew 25 and verse 14, we have the devil's angels. Jesus Christ said that hell was made for the devil and his angels. So there's a group of them. Now you say, well, Brother Dan, are all of these different names, is it possible that they're all, the devil's angels? Yeah, listen, sure. I'm not going to say that they're not. But what I'm wanting to do is simply lay out for you that the Bible is giving them different names and painting a different picture. I do want us to turn to this. Turn to Deuteronomy 18. These are familiar spirits. Deuteronomy 18. Now, when people go to seances, people go to fortune tellers, people want to talk to the dead, they want to talk to those that have passed on. Here we go. This is how they are able to communicate with, quote unquote, communicate with the dead. Okay? They communicate through familiar spirits. They communicate through familiar spirits. Now, I know some of it is fake. They have an earpiece in their ear, or they get all this information and they're relaying information. That happens. But I will also tell you that in Deuteronomy 18, they didn't have microphones in their ears. Okay, are you following me? Okay, and so Deuteronomy 18:11, he's just talking about not messing with people that dive into this, but he says of a charmer or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard or a necromancer. Okay, a familiar spirit. This is spirit. It means what it says, familiar. They have a familiarity. Well, I saw my grandma in my room, and she spoke to me. Okay, you saw something. Wasn't grandma, but you saw something that knew what grandmama looked like, and that knew information that grandmama had. Well, who are these individuals? I believe these are familiar spirits. And here we have the Bible that's making reference to that. I didn't put a scripture reference down for this. I apologize. But then there are unclean spirits, evil spirits. This is mentioned in the New Testament. Not 100% sure. There's differences of opinion on what an unclean spirit is or an evil spirit. As far as, are they simply descriptions of what they do? Is it a description of how bad they are? Some even go that the unclean spirit, evil spirits, and demons may be very similar to the same thing, in that maybe they are the spirits of, the beings of Genesis 6, 1-4. Differences of opinion on that. Me personally, I'm not 100%. I'm not convinced of a lot, or of necessarily per se what they are, other than the fact that they are some type of demonic spirit, evil spirit, unclean spirit that torments mankind. The Bible does reveal enough of that, and Jesus Christ believed that they were real, and I believe that they are real today. There's another group. I won't turn there. Simply mentioned in 1 Timothy 4:1, called seducing spirits. They are spirits that seduce. They deceive. I think that these may be a part of all of them. They're all seducing and they're all deceiving. But it's possible that there's a group of spirit beings that, man, they just run around deceiving people. I think that we would see this a lot in religious circles. We would see that. And then lastly, in Luke 11:26, we won't turn to this one either, we have wicked spirits. They may be different than unclean spirits and evil spirits. These are referenced as wicked. That's a very, very powerful word that is used to describe these beings. And so these are the satanic angels, and we may later on in our study go into more detail concerning some of these. Later on, fallen angels. We might look at some maybe more detail about that. But I wanted you to understand. I want you to see that the people of the Old Testament, 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago. Hold on that thought. I find it very interesting that to this day, as smart as we are, we don't know how they built the pyramids. Really. We don't know how they got the gigantic stones on Easter Island. How do they move them? They weigh 100 tons. Yeah. How in the world did they move them on this island that's away from everything? I go, hold on, hear me out. How did they move that? My point is they were not ignorant people. They were not cavemen that grunted when they talked. They didn't do that. They were highly intelligent individuals that knew how to construct, how to build, how to cut straight lines in stone. They knew how to do all of that. Where do they get the information to do that? How do they get the knowledge to do that? This is my point. This is my point. This is where I'm going on this, okay? I don't think they just made these things up. I don't think that the Philistines, when they started worshiping Dagon and called him Dagon, that somebody was sitting there and was like, hey, I know, let's just make up something. I don't think that. I really believe that they saw something, that something came out of the sky. Read the book of Acts. As soon as Paul and Barnabas started doing some miracles, do you know what the people of, I think it's Iconium or Lyconium, you know what they said? The gods have descended, and they called Barnabas Jupiter, and they called Paul Mercury or Mercurius. Whoa! And so so it's very possible. I'm like 99% that these individuals saw something. And what did they see? According to the scriptures, they saw devils, they saw gods, they saw spirit beings that manifested themselves for the purpose of being worshipped. And God did not do that because He didn't want them worshiping an idol or some statue of Him. God desired for them to worship Him through covenant and through different things of this nature. And so next week we'll conclude the indoctrination of the angels. We'll look at some descriptions of them, what they're made of, what kind of bodies they have, what the Bible reveals, and maybe even a delineation of the angels, the faithful angels and the fallen angels. We might look at some more concerning that. Thank you all for coming. That will conclude today's lesson. Those that are watching at home, thank you for tuning in. Please watch and check it out a little bit later. Y'all have a wonderful day.